these are the cables that's arrived for my DC to DC charger. So first task is to see if the cables are long enough, which means roughly laying them out in the van. Hopefully they will be, and if they're not, God knows what I'll do. Huge cables, like, I don't know if the measurement's on there, is it? I can't see it. Here we go. So this is the electrical wall, the back of it. I've started to, as you can see, I've cut channels for the wires to go into there, for the wires to come in and out, and then I've cut long slots by the 12 volt fuse box, because there'll be lots of little wires coming out of there. So I'm gonna sand it down, get rid of the rough edges. I think I'm going to paint it grey, and then I'm going to start to build. It's taken a long time. These aren't perfect, but everything takes a long time, I think, and nothing seems to be perfect. But I'm going to give it a light sanding, quick paint, and then start to assemble the electrical cabinet, and then start to attach things. Oh my god. Okay, that's the batteries wired together. Positive to positive to positive, negative, negative, negative. I got some extra terminal things there. I switched this battery round so that my connections are going to go through the back, so they have a short run and they're not going from the front to the back. The cables that I got were too long. I bought pre-made cables with lugs on. Too long, and I bought too many. No idea how I miscounted that, because you need one cable, two cables. I bought four. Don't know what I was thinking. I've run my, see the big black and red thing, I've run that up and over right down the front, and that's for the DC to DC charger, which unfortunately is going to sit where this white paper is. It's going to sit outside the electrical box. There's a wall coming off these stubs down, and then unfortunately, and all the wires are going to come in through there, and that'll be boxed in. I've got a plan in my head, which is how it usually goes wrong, but we'll get going. Right, the cabinet's coming together a little bit now. That big shelf will take the inverter, and then the other components are on the back. You can see the 12 volt fuse board has been put in place. I did pre-order some cables, and it looks like I haven't got the right lengths. I had a negative buzz bar, and then I wasn't going to use it. Now I might need to use it to get the cables to fit, but we'll see how we go on. I might have to buy new lengths of cables, but we'll see. The big long slot there is for the cables to come in and out from the battery. So this is where the fun starts. I think I've got myself set up. I've got my heat shrink. I've got a variety of different connectors, spades and all sorts of stuff there. My 12 volts in, I've got it. See, straight away I've just realised I've not put it through a breaker. I need my breaker here. I need the positive to the breaker, and then out the back of the breaker to that. At the minute I've got it straight from the battery, straight in the back and straight into the bottom of the positive on the 12 volt fuse. So I need to put my breaker there. I suppose this is how we learn. Could be a bit of a dangerous way to learn, but anyway, this is how we learn. So I need to put my 50 amp breaker in. All good stuff. Okay, so I've started to get the wires sorted, put the breaker in, and I'm doing the 12 volt fuse panel. So far I've done the USBs, I've done the max air, and I'm just about to do the shower light, even though there's nothing at the other end of the cable, but I'm doing this end now. So I'm using heat shrink, and with the heat shrink both of them look black when you look at them like that, and from the box they all look like black wires. You can see around there that they're red, but yeah, they look like black but they're not. So we'll keep moving on slowly and surely, and then I'll do some testing. So that's the 12 volt wired in. Max air fan, water pump, bed lights for reading, overhead ceiling lights, USBs. There's a wire for the truma. I'm not doing a diesel heater through this. I'm going to do an inline fuse direct to the battery. I've still got to wire the batteries to the chassis and give it a good earth. I'm compiling a bit of a shopping list now as to wires and cables and connections and lugs that I'm short of, but I'm reasonably alright with that. It'll look pretty when it gets its cover on and we label everything up. I've made a note of everything because obviously they just don't mean anything sat like that. And at the moment I've got 1, 2, 3 spares, 3 vacant places. There's only 2 things connected properly, which is the USB at the front of the van and the max air. So when I put this trip on, you'll see that because there's a full circuit there, that's telling you the fuse is gone. If there was a fuse there, the 2 lights. So if I press that, that's it, that's disconnected. There's no power through that now, which is exactly what we need. I think the way to tackle this is not to look at it as an overall diagram, because that becomes overwhelming. I think the thing to do is just do one thing at a time. So that's my 12 volt to a 50 amp breaker wired in. I'm probably going to do my DC charger next, although I'm waiting for lugs for that. I've got 25mm wire, which you can see the red and black there, that goes up and over. I've shown you this before, and it goes through the void, yay, all the way down to the front and then inside. So yeah, quite pleased with myself again. Keep surprising myself on how I'm managing to get things done with the help of YouTube and everybody out there in YouTube land. All the 12 volt stuff is connected to the fuse board. They're just things missing at the other end, so they're not connected to anything. However, I've made a bit of progress with the lights. I'll show you that. What I've done is, because the ceiling's not up, some scrap pieces of wood roughly where the lights are going to go, so I can get the lights wired in, see that that's working. Then obviously at the point where I put the ceiling up, then the lights will get refitted properly. So that one's the shower, this one's in the kitchen, and then you can see these 3 at the front are actually done. One there and one here. So that's what the lights are going to look like, and that's where they're going to be over the table and the entrance step. And I'll show you what that looks like here. So if I turn this on, you can see now we've got some more lights because there's different things connected. So I'll pop that out of me. I'll put the fuse in. 1, 2, 3, 4. is the entrance and table lights, is what it's called. And I'll put that up, and down there you have lights. And just so that's tripped and that's working. So I'm going to do these now, and then that's the lights roughly done. Progress, progress. So in the previous vlog you'll see that I've more or less finished my 12 volt lighting now. The ceiling's not up, obviously it all needs to come back down, but I wanted to get it connected, working, tested, and that seems to be okay. And again, in a previous video I made a comment about doing one thing at a time, and I didn't follow my own advice. And yesterday at the end of the day, after having quite a successful day with the 12 volt lighting, I got myself into a bit of a state because I didn't follow my own advice, and I started to look at solar, the MPPT, and whether I was going to connect that next. The panels out on the roof, but I was going to try and do the battery side of things and get that the MPPT charge controller mounted, and that kind of thing. Then I started to look at the DC to DC charger, where I've run the big heavy cable from front to back, back to front. So there's an end at the starter battery, there's an end at the leisure battery, and somewhere in between there I've got to fit the DC to DC. And then I started looking at the inverter. Then I started to get my cables mixed up, because everything's sort of in boxes, but you get them all out. And I'm thinking I haven't got a cable for this, or I've got too many cables for that, and I just couldn't work it out. Looking at wiring diagrams online of like Greg Virgo and people like that, the inverter needs a 35mm cable. Didn't look like I had any. I had, but they were in a different box. And this is how the day ended, quite frustrated and annoyed and perplexed at what were going on. So I had to think about it last night, watch some more videos, and it's a case of one job at a time, which is what I said. We'll see. Okay, so here it is, 60 amp DC battery charger from Renogy. There's the input. Seems straightforward. Big heavy cables going there. Now here's my problem end. So I can show you down here. Plus, minus. Now this thing, D plus, I don't know if you can see it, there you go. This end is D plus, and through watching YouTube yesterday, I've got to find a feed, electrical feed, that only works when the ignition is turned on. So when the ignition's turned on, it sends 12 volt down the wire into there, which tells this that the engine's running, and turns it on. And the supposedly the point is that it doesn't continue to drain with the engine off and the alternator not turning. It doesn't drain your cab starter battery. So that's the point of that wire. Now it doesn't come with a wire. I've only seen that because of YouTube, so I didn't know that that were a thing. And then these things, the red 1 through 5, they're all kinds of nonsense about float levels and charge levels and lithium. I don't know what they are. I've got to research all that before I turn it on. But right now I'm looking at where I'm going to put it. It was going to go down on the wheel arch at the back, as you know, but now because I've got to find this extra wire from the fuse box, which is at the front again, so instead of running a single wire under the floor, up there, all along there, down, out to the wheel arch, I'm now thinking about fitting the DC to DC charger under the bench seat stroke pull out bed, so that the cable run is quite short. yeah, so that's my thoughts. So I might fit it just here, and then the charge will run up, round and down and into the batteries. So I think it's going to be sited there. I even thought about putting it under these double seats, but I'm not sure about that. Still thinking about it. Okay, so I found the fuse panel, which is under the glove box on a Sprinter. You can see this thing here. This is a constant live that somebody's put in before I've had the van. They've just shoved a connection in there, it looks like, and that's just a live feed. I don't know, well, I know it doesn't go to anything because I found the wire. It goes up through the bulkhead, and when I found it there was just a terminal block on the end. I didn't know if it was live or not, so I taped it up and I just put question marks because I don't know what it was for. Now I know that it's a live feed, permanently live, no fuse in it, so that's no good to me. I thought I was going to get lucky and I was just going to be able to run it from here, but it's permanently live, so it's nothing to do with the ignition, so it'd have the DC to DC turned on all the time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this thing, which I've faffed about. I think you turn it on to 20 and then you use your two terminal things, and you put the black one to a piece of metal, earth, and then the red one goes to the power to find out what you've got. So I need to find one of these that's not working and then turn the ignition on and see if it puts a feed through. I'm not happy about this. This is not my comfort zone and I didn't expect to be having to do this. It was bad enough looking to connect the thing up. Now I'm going to find something that I don't know what I'm doing. But this is how we learn, I suppose. So I'm going to have a fiddle about, as the saying goes, and see where we get. So I found it. The ones at the bottom there, I tried all those, including the empty ones where there's no fuse. And eventually, I went on to the next row, and it's fuse number 24, which is a 10 amp fuse, is only live when the ignition is on. And how I've done it is using the spade connector, putting it in there with a little terminal block on the end, and then I put my, this is going to be hard to do, I don't think I can do it, well I can't do it, but using my voltmeter, I put the negative to a body panel screw thing, and then the positive to the terminal block there, and you only get a reading when the ignition's on, which is brilliant. So I found it. Now what I do with it, that's another thing. So I bought myself a new bit of kit. Wasn't massive money, but I didn't want to spend it. I think it was £25. It's a crimping tool that will crimp different sizes. So I've got a small crimping tool, and of course I'm getting to big cables now, so it wouldn't fit. I'd tried doing all sorts. I'd bashed it with an hammer and clamped it with a G clamp and tried to screw it flat and all sorts of stuff, and it just weren't safe, so I spent the money. So now I've got the cables on there, not the cables, the sockets on there. The green wire is the wire through to the D+, so when the engine starts it tells this to start. So I'm going to crimp these on now, crimp these ends on. Okay, as I keep doing, I've not done much filming, but I've made quite a bit of progress with the electrical. What you can see there is the DC to DC charger. It's a 60 amp Renogy. So this is me setup. I've got three 100 amp hour lead acid batteries. I know they're not the best, but it's what I can afford. You can see there a great big thing, a 2000 watt inverter. That takes you 12 volts and turns it into 240, which is the UK electric system. So I can plug into this side down here. I can plug into that and run electric stuff with a peak of 2000 watts. The black box there on the top left is the MPPT solar charger. So it's obviously, sun's going down now, it's getting on a bit, but that's a 20 amp Renogy MPPT charge controller with the BT1 there, which is a Bluetooth. That then gives you, when you're within range of it, you can see what your batteries are doing and what the solar's doing on your phone. So that it's a dual pole isolator, and I've put the solar panels into that so I can turn the solar panels off before the power gets to the MPPT and anywhere else. So I can isolate the solar panels is the point. Why the hell it's that big, I don't know. Under that is a 20 amp fuse from Renogy that is between the MPPT and the battery. The breaker there, the 50 amp breaker, is for the 12 volt fuse panel there, which needs its cover on. And then the 200 watt breaker down there is for the inverter. So it gives the inverter a 200 amp breaker switch. So I've seen prettier, I've seen better laid out and things, but this is me and I'm doing what I can. I've got a remote for the inverter, so I can turn the inverter on and off remotely once the furniture's in and the walls are in properly. The lights are all rigged just so that I can test that they're working, and they all work. Obviously when the ceiling goes up, these will need refitting properly. I've got a switch to put in there in that bunch of wires for, what's that switch for? Oh, that's the switches for these 3 lights in a row. The shower light will have its own switch, and then the 3 at the bottom there, which is above the entrance, 1 above the entrance, 2 above the table, there's a switch going in where this silver foil is. So there'll be a switch there for them 3, a switch back here for these 3, and a separate switch for the shower. So just 3 switches to fit, which I'm not really fussed about. I know what they are, I know what I'm doing. So that's the electric done, in a fashion, as much as it's ever going to be done with me. And now the next thing to do is to sit and decide. I think the next thing is to lay out the bed, so I can get the absolute depth of my bed, and then from this side I can then do the kitchen, and from this side I can do the shower wall. But I need to know where my bed's going to end. So, you know, does it come right to the end? Is it over here? Is it over there? Everything matters. Now these all need, oh, that one's ended up wrong side. What's that? Water pump. Somehow that's ended up the wrong side. That needs to be in here, but that's minor. So all this needs boxing in into there, all the way down, and supported and boxed in. That's my earth, which I think is sufficient. So yeah, we'll see how long it lasts. I don't know what it's going to be like when I'm driving, whether or not it's going to we'll see how long it lasts, see what kind of job I've done. Hopefully it won't burn the van down, and hopefully it'll be okay. Next job, don't know, got to work it out, got to think about it. I think it's going to be the bed, and I'll try and film, promise, honest. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. Click like, it'll mean that other people get to see the channel if people are liking the channel. So that's my electrical almost concluded. Quite pleased with myself, and as I said in the other video, or even at the beginning of this video, as I said at the beginning of this video, just do one thing at a time. Don't look at it like that, because you'll never be able to do it if you look at it as a whole. Just do the MPPT, then do the 12 volt, or vice versa. I did the 12 volt first. Oh, and the other thing is the solar's on the roof. So 2 100 watt panels on the roof. I'll see if I can show you. I'm not sure I'm tall enough. So what I've used is the spring-loaded nuts that run in the channel nut. On this short one I had to cut the spring size down because this is obviously a 22 mil, it's shorter. This is called a top hat bracket and that's just bolted in. In fact, I'm looking at that. That's one I'm going to have to work on, look. I can see this washer's not gone in, and if you look in here, the nut has actually gone right in and tightened down onto the bottom, but it's not actually tightened it on. I did have to shorten a few nuts. So yeah, so this is how my solar's on. It's on with Unistrut M6 bolts, I can't remember, and spring loaded with a penny washer, and then spring loaded channel nuts, and it's absolutely solid, not going anywhere, and they're not that big to cause a flex in the middle. They're quite short. With a bit of more thought I could have put one further at the front, put one across the back, and then left myself all this room, but it is what it is. I don't think we're ever going to put a deck up here. On the Unistrut I sprayed one side black, as you can see, so that when you're looking at it from the ground looking up you can see a black trim, but the rest of it I didn't paint, and the inside's not painted because nobody's going to see that, and that's just how I roll.